Hi, everyone. It's Howard Gearhauser alongside my dad, Dr. Richard Gearhauser. In today's episode, we are going to talk about a really important topic, and that is sleep. So, most of you probably know that getting a good night's sleep is super critical and important for good health. So, we want to talk about how you can actually get good sleep, what the consequences are if you're not getting deep restorative sleep every night, and then simple techniques to clean up your sleep environment. That way, you're getting your 7 to 8 hours of deep sleep every single night. So let's jump right into it. Dad, can you tell us a little bit more about deep sleep, what that means, and why it's so important for our health?
Well, I think the research is pretty clear over the last 10 years that sleep isn't just a luxury, and that sleeping 6 hours is not the same as sleeping 7 or 8. So most studies have shown that 7 or 8 hours is optimal, and there are studies showing that more sleep can be detrimental, like greater than 9 hours. So that area is a little more cloudy, but for sure we see this optimal regeneration with 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And this sleep, needs to go through the stages. There's different stages of sleep that we cycle through about every 90 minutes. And we need to cycle through all the stages of sleep approximately 4 to 5 times a night. So if you're intermittently waking up and don't go through the 90-minute cycles, then you don't get to the deep sleep because that's toward the end of the cycle. And deep sleep is where we restore. That's where we implant our short-term memory into long-term memory. So, there's different things. We could sleep 8 hours, but if we're waking up every 30 minutes, that's still going to be disrupted sleep.
So sleep, getting that 7 to 8 hours is critically important. What are some of the health consequences if we're not getting the 7 to 8 hours of deep sleep? Or maybe we're sleeping for 7 to 8 hours, but it's restless. We're not hitting all of the different stages of REM.
Yeah, so I think our modern environment has totally disrupted, unless you're really tuned into your sleep hygiene. Our environment today, we have lights at night. The light is part of what keeps us awake. So if we can have sunlight level light late at night, or we look into our cell phone or computer screen or looking at our television, and we have this light that is at the intensity and color temperature of daytime, then that disrupts our sleep hormone melatonin. I think that's pretty well known that, this light at night, and then, we're a 24/7 society. So we have a lot of people work at night. Now, there's absolutely no question that night shift workers have more cancer, they're heavier, they have more depression, they have more suicide. These things are just facts. Humans are not night owls genetically. Genetically, you go back to our hunter-gatherers, we can't see well enough at night to be a nocturnal animal. So the only reason we're nocturnal animals today is because of artificial lighting. But we haven't had time to adapt to change our genetics and epigenetics. And, maybe we're in that process. I keep an open mind. Maybe eventually we'll have a whole segment of the population that is, their epigenetics, the way their genes are expressed, have changed, and now they thrive on artificial lights and being up all night working. But right now, as I said, the research is very clear that this is bad for you in a multiple ways. We're also stressed out. You think about the hunter-gatherer living out in nature. They had to worry about lions and tigers and maybe enemies and maybe storms. So every once in a while their stress system, the fight or flight nervous system, got turned on because, a pack of wolves was outside their hut, or, something was happening where they had to run or fight. But most of the time they were in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and recovery. Well, today, what are we worried about? Worried about the boss is mad at me. Worried about, oh, I don't have enough money to pay that credit card bill. Worried about, the 19 things you get in the mail every day. If you watch the news, you're worried about every war on the planet and every bad thing that happened. If you watch that every day, you're going to be, unless, you're stronger than me mentally, you're going to be chronically stressed out. So chronic stress is a big issue with sleep. And then we use stimulants to stay awake. Caffeine and the sports drinks have the stimulants in them. Sugar. We use all these stimulants that if we take them too late toward the end of the day, they're going to decrease our sleep. And then, as I mentioned, our light environment is horrible. And then things that stimulate your mind, like if you're playing some kind of mind game, right, but like a video game right before you go to bed, or doing something that takes a lot of mind energy right before you go to bed, that can also be a problem. Even things that I like to do, like cold thermogenesis, where you get in the cold water. Well, if I do that in the late afternoon or evening, I can't sleep, because what does cold thermogenesis do? It stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. And we want our parasympathetic nervous system stimulated before we go to sleep. So that's why something like meditating can put you in the same brain waves that you would have during sleep, and can actually help you go to sleep if you meditate in the evening.
And the other thing I would say about sleep is kind of the dogma around sleep. A lot of us associate sleeping and napping with being unproductive and lazy, and we use stimulants in lieu of a nap to keep us going. And I think that we've almost demonized sleep to some extent. And then you combine that with, as my dad mentioned, being stressed out, having bad sleep environment, having these artificial lights that are keeping us up. So the time we have allocated towards sleep at night is really disruptive, and it's not that deep sleep that's required for our bodies to restore. So it's important that we start cleaning these things up. So if you're someone who works a 9-to-5 job and doesn't have the luxury of taking a nap in the afternoon, it's really important that you get your sleep at night dialed in, that you're taking advantage of those 7 to 8 hours. Otherwise, you're not going to repair, you're not going to restore. So what's some of this latest research that you mentioned as it pertains to sleep? For those individuals who aren't getting the full sleep every night, what are they seeing in terms of health outcomes?
Well, an easy example is something as simple as daylight savings time. So daylight saving time, where this time, changes in the fall and in the spring. And what happens when you change the clock and you lose an hour of sleep because you change the clock? Well, heart attacks the next day are increased 24%. So that's how much just 1 hour difference can make. It can dramatically increase the risk of people who have heart attacks in just one day from one silly hour by just changing your clock. You're not changing the sun or the amount of daylight or night. You're just changing your clock, and it results in thousands of people dying or having to go to the hospital in the ICU and get catheters stuck up their arteries. And the converse is, when the time changes, but you get an extra hour of sleep because the clock goes in your favor as far as getting more sleep, heart attacks go down 21%. Wow, that's pretty powerful. But there's a lot of other bad effects. They affect our immune system. As I mentioned, that shift workers have more cancer. And what they found is that losing sleep or not getting adequate sleep decreases your natural killer cells. And these are important for our defense against pathogens that might infect us, bacteria, viruses, things like that. And also the cells that become our own cells that become unruly in our body, which are the precancerous cells. So lack of sleep, also 70% drop in those natural killer cells with just one night of getting a short sleep. We also know that there's studies showing that short sleep durations increases your risk of all-cause mortality. And what they've done, interesting studies where they have someone, a group of young, healthy people, and they have them decrease their sleep time to 6 hours for 1 week. And what they found in this case is it changes gene expression for hundreds of genes. So some of the genes are upregulated and some of the genes are downregulated, but it creates chaos where the normal, when you sleep 8 hours, those genes stay pretty consistent on how they're expressed. But you reduce your sleep, suddenly your genetic expression is getting out of balance, and that's pretty scary. Now, another study of functional MRIs, so functional MRIs are MRIs, the magnetic resonance imaging, which shows how your brain's functioning. Okay, so with one night of not sleeping, they show in a functional MRI that you decrease your imprint of your memories from that day by 40%. So we don't consolidate our memories if we're not sleeping well. So if you're a student, that's bad. If you're a worker and you've got to remember what your client needs and this and this is bad. This is bad for our productivity. It's bad for our safety when we don't imprint our memories. So we don't imprint our memories nearly as well if we don't sleep. When we go into deep sleep, the amplitude of our brain waves gets much larger. And so in that deep sleep where we get the most restoration. Well, at the very peak of those waves, there's a flash of light, kind of like a camera going off or maybe a star flashing. And what they've figured out is those flashes of light are actually kind of like a file transfer of where a memory is going from short-term memory to long-term memory. Short-term memory, you're going to forget it tomorrow. Long-term memory sticks with you, so you can use that memory as, wisdom for your life. You remember, hey, don't do this or do that. It has a good outcome, or doing that has a bad outcome. So we get that imprinted from this flash of light. And you might think, well, what is that flash of light? It's an electrical flash of light.
So it sounds like this electricity that's going on during deep sleep within the brain is pretty important. Is there a way we can augment that or add more electricity to our brains?
Well, that's a good point. They've done some studies. They have an instrument where they can add electricity directly to your brain. It's called direct current brain stimulation. So direct current brain stimulation, they did a study in young people and they had them get this direct current brain stimulation. And what they found is that they had 2 times the ability to recall things when they had the extra electricity, doubled their memory capacity. So it's pretty exciting that this might be a way to help people that have had traumatic brain injury. We know that this direct current brain stimulation has been successful for depression. And here it shows that it helps people with memory. Maybe eventually this will be a treatment for dementia or Alzheimer's disease. I think it's already being used in studies. So we'll see. But the way I like to get extra electricity in the brain, there are some things that I've already talked about ad nauseum, but one is the sun. As you can see, I'm getting some direct electricity from the sun. Now, the sun has photons, and photons, when they hit certain structures in our molecular structure, turn into an electrical current, okay? And that effect was discovered by Albert Einstein. It's called the photoelectric effect. So the photoelectric effect is constantly giving us extra electricity for our body to use in a myriad of ways. Okay, Einstein figured this out, and it's really important. So what's another thing that our population has done since the Industrial Revolution? We've gone indoors. Some people are never outdoors. I would say It's rare that there's a person that's outdoors enough to collect, say, a good amount of electricity that a hunter-gatherer would collect. That would probably be being outside 4, 5, 6 hours at least a day. Rarely, unless someone has an outdoor job. But even the people with outdoor jobs, I see they're covered up, they're wearing big sunglasses. If you cover up and you wear big sunglasses, you won't get the electricity. Now, what's another important thing, and we'll have a whole nother video about this topic because it's deep and it's important and it's controversial, but one of the molecules that specially creates this photoelectric effect better than most other molecules, and it's speculated in science, not by crazy people like me, but scientists are deep studying the intense mechanisms of this photoelectric effect creating a direct electric current is augmented by a molecule called DHA. DHA is one of the omega-3 fatty acids. So where do we get DHA? We can make it, but to a very limited extent. It's important for all vertebrates, but it's especially important for us humans because we have this big frontal lobe of our brain that needs a lot more DHA. And there's a whole hypothesis out there that DHA was the reason we kind of took over the earth mentally with this big ass brain, was because of DHA was available in the diets along the coast in Africa. Along the coast, along the rivers and lakes, they found that some of the first humans had huge mounds of shells near their caves where they were eating shellfish. They found other tribes in Africa, the original humans, had huge mounds of catfish bones where the catfish would swim up the rivers and spawn, and they'd be easy to grab. And so that was kind of the biggest part of the diet. And then there's other research that shows that our mental capacity peaked about 10,000 years ago when we started agriculture. And as we started migrating more inland, and our brain has been on a decline since then. So you have to get DHA from a marine source because the DHA is initially made in an algae in the water, but it's the wrong shape. This DHA takes different shapes, and it needs to be a more strung out shape. And the metabolism of the little fish that eats the plankton changes the DHA to the right shape. I'm not a fan of taking fish oil pills. There's been some big new study on fish oil pills showing they don't work. And to me, that's expected. You can't expect to do this huge industrial process to extract oil out of a fish and expect that it's going to be like a natural fish. Can you take algae oil? Well, no. I mean, that's like not taking or not getting the DHA because it's in the wrong position. So the algae oil, even though it's sold out there, it's a billion-dollar industry, I don't believe it's a good way to go. I believe you should get it the natural way from a fish or a shellfish. You don't have to eat it every single day, but you have to keep a supply coming in, because the more you're in the sun, the more you degrade the DHA and need to replace it. And as I say, we can replace some of it, but it's not optimal. And it looks like from our evolution from the first humans to now, that was an important aspect. And we've been de-evolving for the last 10,000 years because we moved inland, we got away from the DHA, and that's been a problem. So DHA will increase this electrical current in your brain so you have better memories. DHA is highly abundant in our retina. So when that sun comes in your retina, it fires that electrical current to set your circadian rhythm. Everything's intertwined. Now, another way to increase your electricity, again, we talked about recently, is grounding. So grounding lets electrons flow up into your body. So if you get outside barefoot or grounded in some way, in the sunshine, you are going to have better sleep. And this is the best way to improve your sleep because you improve your electric charge. And there's other things, of course, that are important, like not blasting a big artificial light in your eyes right before you go to sleep. But the natural way is be grounded, be outside. There may be other things, and there are other things. They find that trees give off chemicals in the air. They cause relaxation. They found that trees have their own heartbeat, a pulsing. So trees are living things that are outdoors, the organisms in the ground. There's so many other ways that being outside might affect our health that I think the safest thing to do is just become a nature lover, because that's what your ancestors did for millions of years. And they didn't have a choice. You have a choice. We have an explosion of bad sleepers around the world. This is a huge epidemic. We have longevity rates going down in the United States, plummeting. We're dying sooner. We have all these diseases that the hunter-gatherers didn't have. So this is something you should really take seriously, in my opinion.
Exactly. So get back to nature, get out in the sun, get grounded. If you do those things, we found that the sleep comes back rather naturally. It's not this really difficult thing to achieve if you get back to nature. But if you keep doing the 95% of your time spent indoors, like most Americans, it's going to be difficult to get good sleep maintaining that same habit of being inside all of the time. So one popular modality for sleep issues are things like CPAP machines, sleeping pills, melatonin supplements. What are your thoughts on those?
Okay. I'm not a fan of melatonin supplements, and that's because the process of activating melatonin is related to light, both light made internally. Most people don't know, most doctors don't know that our cells all emit light. And of course, the sun emits a lot of light. So light is a big factor with melatonin. And there are some studies showing that if you have a higher level of melatonin when it shouldn't be high, like in the middle of the day, that it can actually damage your eye. So I steer clear of melatonin supplements unless there's a huge risk-benefit ratio. Like if somebody has cancer and they're going to die, maybe try melatonin because it has benefits, anti-cancer benefits, antioxidant benefits. But I think messing with melatonin, when we know so little, we're just scratching the surface of what we know. I think deciding to take melatonin long-term is not a good idea. To use it to correct your jet lag, I wouldn't have a big problem with that, for a couple of days. But I'm not a fan of melatonin. I'm not a fan of sleeping pills. Sleeping pills show that your mortality goes up, your mood goes down. The sleeping pills are bad on all fronts. Your sleep is more disrupted, so you really don't get the benefit. It might knock you out, but you don't get the benefit of having more deep sleep. You just knocked yourself out artificially, and it has a multitude of negative things. They found that people that take more than 18 sleeping pills a month, die much sooner than somebody who doesn't. So sleeping pills are something to stay away from, except for, maybe occasionally. I'm sure it wouldn't be that big a deal. But to chronically use them is not good. And it's proven that this is a big risk.
So another thing that a lot of people do to help them sleep are things like CBD and also alcohol. Do you have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, alcohol can maybe help you fall asleep, but it causes more fragmented sleep. So alcohol is definitely not something that is good. CBD, that might be better. I don't think we have many studies on that at the present time to know for sure. But that's something I would be more in favor of than alcohol to try. But again, you need to do the things that are critical, and that is getting that sun exposure, getting the grounding, the artificial light at night. We know that trashes your melatonin, especially the blue light. So you need blue blocking glasses if you're going to have any blue light come in your eyes. And those are the orange or amber glasses. You need to wear those at night if you're going to have something on. That to me is a non-negotiable, because otherwise you are going to lower your melatonin. And melatonin, not only important for sleep, it orchestrates how we repair during sleep. So not only does it help you fall asleep by making you sleepy, but it orchestrates the repair mechanisms that go on in deep sleep. So melatonin is not something you want to mess with, either by taking it artificially or by having light in your eyes that should only be there during the daytime. So fire has been okay. Humans have been using fire for about 800,000 years. So we've adapted to the orange and red of fire, which doesn't suppress melatonin.
So to recap, get out in the sun, get out in nature, get electrically connected to the earth by going barefoot or by wearing grounding straps. Make sure that you mind your artificial light at night. So wear those blue blocking glasses, get the blue blocking filters, get the blue blocking apps on your smartphone and on your computer. We're going to do a separate video on artificial light at night, so we'll have more details on that. Clean up your sleep environment, turn off the Wi-Fi at night. These are all things that you can do to enhance your sleep. Try to stay away from the alcohol and the sleeping pills and the melatonin supplements, because we're just not quite sure, what those are doing to our bodies, especially the melatonin supplements. Melatonin has a lot of intricacies that maybe the man-made supplements don't account for. So it's not the same as natural melatonin. Is there anything else you wanted to add in terms of fixing your sleep or making sure you're getting the right amount of restorative sleep every night?
Yeah, and there's the ideas of sleep hygiene, like, don't do other activities in your bed besides sleep and maybe have sex. Don't watch television and sleep in your bed, and don't work in your bed or work on your computer in bed. So leave the bed, have the ritual of where you create a ritual around going to sleep. The bed's like a sacred place where you go into this special travel through the universe each night as your mind, becomes unconscious. And, think of it as something that is special and sacred. And then, there's, not doing the activities like working out. You shouldn't work out in the early evening. Stimulates your sympathetic nervous system, just like me when I do cold therapy too close to night, definitely hyped up, and it's hard to fall asleep. Meditation is a great thing to get those brain waves slowed down so you can sleep better.
One other thing too, which kind of relates to don't be on your computer or watching TV in bed, is subconsciously, like the stuff you're watching right before you actually fall asleep is really important. So listening to some positive affirmations or doing a meditation before actually falling asleep, I found makes my sleep much more restful, makes my dreams much more peaceful, and kind of helps the subconscious programming too. So just be cognizant of the inputs that you're putting into your body before you go to sleep, because those have a big impact on your mental state and your physical state as well. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Cool. So we will see you guys on the next episode. If you like this, please subscribe. Please share this with someone you love, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.